And we're live. It is Friday, February 14th, 2025, the year of our Lord. The campaign of terror against the United States and its people and its allies, the Trump occupation of Washington continues. It is 8:02 a.m. The sun is shining, the birds are chirping, and I believe this is the first time we have ever had 4 different countries represented on screen at the same time. It's going to be a great fucking day because you are watching Dog Shirt TV, and it is a revolution in morning television. And one of the revolutionary features is that it is the only morning show that you can watch in the United States right now in which there are 4 people, 1 in Washington, 1 in Stockholm. You're in Stockholm these days, right, Minna? Yeah. 1 in Kiev and 1 in Oslo, where I assume Karen-Anna is. Come on, guys. We're overrepresenting Nordics. We're bringing you live coverage of Nastia's packing for Washington under missile fire, and it's gonna be a great day. Guys, I'm going to forego the monologue today because, we've got so much to talk about. And so, though I have been upping my monologue game recently, and I want to say the last 2 days I'm particularly proud of, not to do self-praise or anything, but I was freaking great. Those monologues were fabulous. So if you haven't watched them, go back. And also stay for the guests, because both guests were pretty awesome. But I'm upping my monologue game in general, but not today. Minna, please introduce our fabulous guest today.
Thank you so much, Ben. Thanks, Karen-Anna, for joining us today. So just like kicking off with a piece of cultural trivia. In Finland, Valentine's Day, which is today, was originally actually not a romantic celebration, but it's called the Friends Day. So it's to celebrate friendship. So therefore,
in the new anti-DEI era, we have to go only to the original understanding, which is that there's
Did Ben just cut off?
And gets roses.
So. You cut off a little bit, Ben.
It's all right because it's going to get saved and it's all going to upload. It's going to be perfect.
Very good.
Go ahead. I interrupted you.
Back to Karen-Anna. So yeah, I'm really happy that you join us today on the Friends Day. My friend Karen-Anna from Norway. And Karen-Anna is an expert on Russian influence operations, among other things. And she's working at the Norwegian Institute for Defense Studies, it's like adjacent to the armed forces, right?
Yeah, so it's part of the Norwegian army or Norwegian defense, and the Norwegian Institute for Defense Studies is part of the Norwegian Defense University College. So we're merged into the big system.
Yes, great. And I actually promised to start with a very mean question because you just recently finished your PhD. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I wanted to ask you what's your latest, or you must have some kind of a vague memory what you wrote your PhD about. So if you can tell us give us some idea what it was about.
I actually had to go and find the title because I couldn't remember. I was like, what was my title?
Repression is a gift from God and should be honored as such.
It really should. It's a coping mechanism for us human beings. No, but what I did is I wanted to look at Russia's contemporary grand strategy, but focus on the use of information and other unconventional means, focusing on the Nordic region. So basically trying to, instead of looking at the more conventional economic aspects of Russian strategy, which is important and, all over the news and headlines all the time, I wanted to look at that more, everything Russia does below the threshold of armed conflict, which is what we're, I guess we could say, lucky enough to be the recipients of, compared to Ukraine, which is getting the full spectrum of Russia's capabilities thrown at them. So that's the very short summary. And then don't traumatize me anymore, okay?
All right, I'll let you off the hook on that one.
Although,
But
just to be
Yeah.
clear, I mean, so America are maybe not so aware of the full diversity of these Russian tactics, which include, as we've discussed, undersea cable cutting,
Yeah.
but also include spy beluga whales, right? I mean, the
The
Norway
Orthodox
has
Church.
seen
Yeah,
a lot
Yeah.
of weird stuff.
Yeah, well, I actually don't know how to translate it to English, but we had a really fun. There was this beluga whale, which we called, I guess it would be like Whale Demir. So it played off on like Vladimir, but we just threw like the Valdemir. So which Val is whale in Norwegian. So yeah, that's. I mean, I guess we can discuss back and forth whether or not that was, a Russian covert operation, but definitely there's been several instances of using the church. We just actually had an open national threat assessment released last week, and the Norwegian police or security police security service is openly saying that the extent of Russian intelligence and influence activities in Norway is quite extensive, and they've spent a lot of effort rebuilding after we threw out a bunch of so-called diplomats, intelligence officers, after Russia reinvaded or upped its invasion of Ukraine in 2022. So they are at it, and it's across the spectrum from buying property, using the church, cyber attacks, DDoS, and social media, everything.
Well, first of all, it would be inappropriate of me in my capacity as the editor-in-chief of Lawfare if I did not pause at this point to inform you that any writing you ever have on the subject is inherently of interest to Lawfare, and we would love to have a separate conversation with you about writing for us on this set of issues.
I would be delighted to.
And coming on the podcast.
Yes, that would also be. I just let me know, and I will comply.
yeah, Karen-Anna,
Yes,
little
well,
did you know that coming on the Dog Share TV is just like the gateway drug, Like,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, it's sort of the gateway drug, but it's sort of a like the Lawfare is like mainlining heroin, and Dog Shirt TV is more like hallucinogens.
yes,
But
okay, that's fair enough.
I think we need a lot of that nowadays.
yeah.
Yeah.
So how?
Wow.
So one, short of armed conflict, gray zone activity would be trying to install a very friendly president of the United States in order to parrot Russian talking points and maybe stab Ukraine in the back. How's that stuff going?
I mean, it seems
That was
to be
sort of a
working
rhetorical
quite well.
question. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it seems unfortunately to be quite successful.
So
Given.
So, on a serious note, how much of this activity in the case of Norway is really about the high Arctic and is about Arctic competition, and how much of it is stuff that, is going on in every country in Europe, but particularly in countries with borders with Russia, countries
Mm.
that are frontline in some way?
So that's a really good question. I think if I were to divide, Russian, if we stick to like influence activities, I would say perhaps you have like two topics. That's what Russia is really like aiming for nowadays, and one is Ukraine and like Norwegian support to Ukraine, and then you have the High North discussions, especially surrounding Svalbard, which they have, for people who don't know what Svalbard is, I have a map in the background here for the occasion. But Svalbard is an archipelago located in the Arctic, in the high north, as we call it, which is under Norwegian jurisdiction. But it has a somewhat interesting legal arrangement. So 100 years ago, we gained sovereignty over Svalbard, but we also got many countries in order to recognize Norwegian sovereignty over the archipelago. We also formulated this document that assigned citizens of the signatory states equal rights to engage in commercial activities on the archipelago. And Russia is one of the signatory countries, which means they also have a presence on the island. And they actually own about, like, I think 250 square kilometers of land through their state-owned company, Trøst Arktikugol, and they have always complained about, that Norway is, in more or less breaching the Svalbard Treaty, and
You guys are such an imperialist power.
we were very imperialist. Yeah, that's our mindset.
Yeah, ever since Eric the
basically.
Red.
Yeah.
I guess he was Icelandic, but
I was gonna say, I don't know if that's one of our guys, but maybe it's more in the Nordic imperialistic category.
yeah, I mean, you're all the same to Russians.
Yeah.
By the way, Karen-Anna, so like in the report that I also like linked to the chat, which is going on in the background. So you described some incidents that Russia has conducted or like been doing in this sort of like gray zone area in the past years. Like, could you sort of like recount some of the juicier ones? Like, there's also been some stuff related to the Russian Orthodox Church. That is a very dual-use institution, I would say.
Yeah.
If not only one primary use, really. If it's like in the Arctic, in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, but like in Sweden, there was a case where it was used also for money laundering and like accounting crimes and like all kinds of things.
Talking to God is really not in top 5 priority list.
It was like a hotspot of organized crime in addition to being used for espionage. So I would say there's at least two purposes.
Yeah. That's I think that's fairly, it's not even shocking news nowadays that they use the church for several purposes, especially with the very close ties between the Orthodox priest and the Russian intelligence service. So, but yeah, on Svalbard. But I wanted to give like the background just to say like the idea that Russia is complaining about what Norway does and Norwegian compliance with the Svalbard Treaty, like that's not new. And the treaty also has this, I guess, this sentence on military presence on the island, which is sort of restricting. And I guess it has some military restrictions. And I think the term is something like that it shouldn't be used for warlike purposes. But of course, we've been sending, coastal guard and used it for transport of the military helicopters and equipments because it's, Norwegian land. It's not
Right.
like we can't
I'm
have
actually
any.
very afraid of the militarization of Svalbard because I'm afraid you guys are going to use it to support Denmark when we try to take Greenland. And just, speaking as a red-blooded American who's looking after our own interests in the Arctic, Greenland is we're coming for it, and I don't want Svalbard to be used as like a launching pad for the defense of Greenland.
My friends and my husband keep
I
joking
I
that they're
had
going to go to Canada and join the territorial defense forces in
I
Canada to
I
protect
had a
them
I'm
from the
keeping a straight
US.
face when I said that, but I no, it was hard. But my country needs me on this to defend our ambitions to liberate Greenland.
I mean, to put your, very legitimate concerns to rest, I wouldn't be too worried about Norwegian military presence on Svalbard. It's unfortunately probably quite easy to take if you really want to. So I
Well,
guess we have something to work on. So you shouldn't be too worried yet,
yeah, I'm
at
breathing
least.
easier because, like, it would be terrible if, like, the Svalbard Treaty were the thing that prevented Greenland American reunification.
Ugh. I mean, yeah, that's
And it
that.
becoming white, blue, and red land or whatever that
Oh
senator
yeah, that.
said. What was that, Bill? It's crazy.
I I don't know. It's one of the principles to staying sane in Washington, and I insist on observing it. I do not listen to his voice. I do not I have to share a city with him, and all his people. I don't listen to his voice. If I need to know says, I read it. And it's just one day at a time here. So Nastia, don't make me know things about things that he said that
It's hard to keep up
Yeah, I
with
was just
everything.
about to say that you say that you're going like day by day, but it feels like every day is like a week. And I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
Yeah, I was literally like an hour ago, I was writing for my Substack everything that happened like in the past 48 hours with like in Munich and in Brussels with Hexet and Trump calling Putin. Like, Jesus Christ, it was like a 24-hour affair. Like, and
Yeah.
like I'm gonna have like more than 1,000 words on all of the shit that happened because it's just like so packed and it's insane. And it's just a
That
day.
that's the thing. It's just the day, and when I sent a message to Minna, like, so what was the topic again we were going to talk about today? Because it feels almost bizarre talking about the high north with everything that's going on right now, which is just preoccupies
well,
everything
so
and
let's
like,
talk
but
yeah, so let's talk about everything that's going on right now. If uh rather than restrict ourselves to the ostensible subject.
I
Um,
feel like I didn't give Minna her answer though to all the stuff
Oh,
on Svalbard.
No,
well,
But
then
that's
go ahead.
no, no, but so we can circle back to that. I have plenty to say on Svalbard as well, but there there are things happening
who
in
knows?
the
Like
world.
maybe we shouldn't talk about it too much because like it's an island if Trump discovers it. I just like this week asked some British friends like what's she gonna do when he comes and offers to buy your island? Like he
Yeah, I
seems to have a
mean,
thing for this.
look, the good thing, just take it from somebody who has a lot of experience with Trump. The good thing about him for this purpose is that he has the attention span of a gnat. And so, he's talking about abandoning Ukraine today, but he will probably be back on Canadian tariffs by, a week from now. And so,
Yeah.
one of the things that's actually I wouldn't say redeeming about him, because nothing can redeem him, but it mitigates the damage, that he's actually completely incapable of focusing on anything. And so he says, remember last week we were talking about the United States annexing Gaza? Like, that feels like a long time ago, and nobody actually is worried
Said
about
last
it
week.
right now.
Okay. Yeah.
And he doesn't have the focus, except on very specific things like hating immigrants. He doesn't have the focus to do anything, which is not to say you don't do a lot of damage in the process of trying, but it does mean that the bark is always a lot worse than the bite, except in a crisis where,
Yeah.
so then something like COVID happens, and he's completely incapable of and not desirous of managing it. And the danger of this situation is that Putin actually understands this about him and uses the situation to precipitate a crisis in one or more countries. And of course, eyes will be on Ukraine, for which reason he will probably do it somewhere else.
By the way,
So
yeah,
Go-
go ahead, Nastya.
Everyone's like,
I was gonna say, I'm so curious, like, what this like White House communication even looks like. Like, in the last 84 hours, the Secretary of Defense, the President, and Vice President have all said completely contradicting things about their policy towards
yes.
Ukraine.
Yes.
Like, isn't there supposed to be like a meeting, like, where you like coordinate exactly what you're gonna say? Like, it's ridiculous that the Secretary of Defense can go and like make a speech and then
Yeah.
like walk back every point of the speech an hour later, and then have the Vice President contradict it completely. I mean, this is like basic stuff. Like, if you have a terrible, from my point of view, policy, like, at least stick to the policy in one way or the other. You know what I mean? Like, it's so confusing. How is this not coordinated? I don't get it. Like, who wrote this speech for Hegseth? You know what I mean? Like, somebody wrote it.
Yeah.
Somebody decided that this is the policy. Like, I'm just so confused.
I promise you, they will try to spin this as, unpredictability is a strategy.
Right. That this is like on purpose. Yeah.
I will not buy that unless I see some sort of evidence. I will not buy that because it just seems too chaotic.
Yeah, like, you really get the impression that they tried to go for the madman strategy, but what they got was the stupid guy strategy, So
They're closely related. I mean,
fair enough.
the difference between being a moron and being an unpredictable madman, who's actually a genius, is really in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
Fair enough, but it was actually sort of like a nice moral boost for Europe to notice that Hegseth is like so out of his depth. He has no idea what he's doing. Obviously,
Pretty much.
It was agony to watch the press conference because he just kept rambling, and I was like, wasn't he supposed to be a TV host? Like, how can he be a TV host and never had any media like training or whatever?
Because he's never come on Dogshirt TV and had to answer from you.
Yeah, exactly. So it was simply agonizing, and then like sort of like seeing sort of like that was a moral boost that, like, of course, like, Europeans were pretty like not necessarily surprised by the original remarks. Yeah, but I wouldn't say that Europeans were like surprised by the original remarks that he made like yesterday, no, like the day before. But Europeans were like really shocked nevertheless. Like, like it's entirely possible like not to be surprised, but nevertheless shocked. Anyways, and then like less like some 24 hours later, he just walks back all his points, like Nastya just said. And Europeans were like, cool, actually, if we just like give him some backlash, like, apparently it's completely possible to like influence the US position, at least at this stage. And
Well,
I'm just
I don't know who can influence it. Like, this is
No,
my
no,
original
no,
comment.
but
Like, What's this
Minna's
communication? How is this decided?
Minna's point is extremely important, that these guys imagine themselves dragons, but they're actually paper tigers. So, they roar and we don't have any of our Canadians on today. They roar and put 25% tariffs on Canadian goods, and then Canada takes liquor off, American bourbon off the shelves, and they back down right away. They're much more interested in the roar than they are in the coercive effect of the roar. And they're easy to spook. Markets respond to to Justin Trudeau taking liquor off the shelves, and they back down right away. The they talk about defying court orders domestically. Their their record of success in the courts is like they have 1 win and 50 losses, and they're I wouldn't say meekly, but they're not defying the courts, right? That they really actually are much more interested in the macho chest thumping than they are in getting results from the macho chest thumping. And if they chest thump their chests on Monday and on Tuesday they were like, well, we didn't really mean that. That doesn't actually bother them. And so the really important thing from a European point of view, I think, and from a Canadian point of view, and from a Mexican point of view, and all the countries they're trying to bully, is don't back down. Actually go after, make it hard for US companies to do business under the terms that the Trump administration wants, to, publicly cancel contracts with Boeing and go with Airbus, but do it all in public. None of the European Union kind of like we'll talk in bureaucraties, and talk about, but never really announce what we're doing. Get up and say, we're putting a 25% tariff on Apple products. Cancel all the Starlink contracts. Just be aggressive about it, and they back down.
I think it's like really interesting also if we come back to Ukraine and like whatever deal that they think that they are brokering. It's interesting because the plan seemed to have been like the original plan that that Hexa talked about in the first place, that the US brokers some kind of a deal and then washes its hands completely off the consequences of the deal, and then gives it to the Europeans, like, you deal with this. And it was kind of funny because like he seemed so surprised that like if that's not how anything works. Like if you do that, then Europeans may not agree with the terms of your deal, like if it's going to be our problem. And I think that there is a good chance, and everything points that way, that Europeans are actually much more likely to side with Ukraine than with the US on this. So
I mean, they already have.
yeah, so there was this statement, I think yesterday, and I think it's and Kaja Kallas, the EU foreign representative, high representative for foreign policy, also like made it pretty clear that if Ukraine does not want to or cannot accept the deals brokered by the US, it definitely shouldn't, and will keep supporting Ukraine. So this promise is sort of like we are getting to the limit, like everybody has their like limit, and Europe is really getting to that limit. So I think that Trump is actually making it much easier for us to be united than anybody would have expected, because he is overdoing it so massively.
I guess, yeah, or sorry.
No,
Asta,
go
were
ahead,
you...
Karen. Yes, please.
No, I was just going to say that, but it's still, I mean, yes, I agree. Like perhaps the approach towards Trump and his administration is to actually push back, like we keep saying that we should do towards Russia as well, right?
I was just gonna
Um,
say it's kind of
yeah.
the
Same
same
strategy.
thing.
Yeah,
But their minds are not that unlike. They
yeah.
are two guys who see themselves as these entitled great powers that should, be able to dictate what everyone else does, just to be, I don't know. I don't think it's too unfair to say that, but there's still this
Yeah, but there's one
sense.
really important difference. It's
Yeah.
a really important difference. Putin is smart.
Hmm. Well, is
I'm,
he that
I'm
smart
look,
still? Like,
I'm not being
I agree.
cheeky.
Yeah, no, I,
Putin,
yeah,
Putin is
it's more
smart
on Trump.
and reasonably rational within the confines of his distorted worldview. Trump is not smart and is not rational, even within the confines of his distorted worldview.
But
And that's a big difference.
But that's the thing, right? The Russian saying, you go like to fish in murky water, and that's basically what Russia is doing and what they will try to do. And my concern here is, with the U.S. now pulling back, because that's what it seems like they are doing, regardless of what happens, or the U.S. is basically saying, and I'm not sure, like this has been part of a long trend, right?
mm,
US has been saying like we will look towards China. That's where, China is our main rival. Europe, you have to uh, put your money into your military and your defense budget, and
All of that
I
is
think,
true,
and
by the
that's
way.
fair. And that's fair. Yeah, that's fair enough. Like I think it's on high time, and we are already way behind. Like we should have started in 2014, to be honest, and perhaps even before that. But we should at least have really, really amped up our production and everything in 2022, and we have to a certain degree. But it's a little, too late right now, at least when the U.S. when we have Trump saying everything he has for the
the
past
wake up
24.
call has become like a European running gag that like
Exactly.
it's
And
it's ridiculous.
and
Yeah.
and I have to say, I don't know if you read, maybe not in the US, but so the Danes came out with an updated threat assessment concerning the likelihood of a Russia-Europe NATO war. And they said, well, there are these three conditions, and if we get to like a worst case scenario on all these three metrics, the likelihood increases. And it was, a bad outcome for Ukraine concerning this war, a U.S. that's pulling out of Europe, and then you have, you know, Europeans bickering and not being able to agree among themselves, and especially inside NATO. And that was Wednesday morning, I think. And we were all like, yeah, if those three conditions were to happen, yeah, then we agree the likelihood would probably increase. And then, like a day
In
later, we're
24
all
hours,
like,
it all
yeah,
happens.
yeah, I was like, what's happening? So I mean, yeah, it's historic times
And not
for
in
sure.
the good way. Um,
And not in the good way, no.
However, I want to offer a bright spot about our country, um, which is that we go through these spasms of, whether you call it isolationism or whether you call it uh, there are many threads in American intellectual history and political history that you can use to describe it. They come together in different forms. These are themes in American life that are persistent. And the Soviet Union was extremely disciplining about them, which is to say, if you point enough missiles at us, um, it concentrates the mind over long periods of time. Um, and these themes tend to rear their heads in very dangerous ways at precarious times and do tend to lose over time, however powerful they seem in at any given moment. And so if you think about the year 1939 and 1940, this is the height of the America First movement, and it commanded a very
Mm.
substantial majority of the American population, and it lasted exactly as long as, and by the way, kept us out of the war,
Mm.
for a good long time, right? And it lasted exactly as long as it was viable. I mean, the Japanese kind of obviated it, but these themes, these tend to lose over time because they're not really consistent with existing in a international system that you don't get to exempt yourself from. And so I do think in the long run, U.S. withdrawal from the European theater is just not a viable position, and therefore a lot of the stuff that is really scary noise is really scary, but it is ultimately more noise than anything else because
Mm.
you just can't do it. And so, I mean, Churchill's great formulation of it was the Americans always end up doing the right thing after exhausting all other possible options. And we do go through the cycle of exhausting all possible options, and uh, we've I've never lived through one of those cycles before, but and it is really jarring to a sensibility. But I do have a certain level of confidence that we come through it on the other side.
I have two caveats on this. So the first one is that like the last cycle took place before America built all these worldwide alliances after the Second World War. And I think that like yes, in the 40s it was maybe optional to an extent for the US to involve itself or not. But after you've built a whole world order based on this kind of complex network of alliances that inherently like after you have created extended deterrence, extended nuclear deterrence, the stakes are so massively different this time. And also like previously in the past we nevertheless didn't have the situation that as Europeans we would have had to be concerned about an actively hostile US government that actually sort of like enables our adversaries instead of deterring them. So this is, I think, like pretty new, and I think that the damage that can be done here is is staggering. And I hope that this flurry of like insane things that are happening now is gonna like slow down at some point soon, and maybe that the American people will stand up also and say like this is not okay also what they're doing domestically. So the impression is actually right now that they have a very clear domestic agenda, and it's just a question of like how far they will go with it. And in terms of foreign policy, given like what Karen-Anna was just like sort of recapping earlier, that there's and Nastia as well, that there's been these like huge contradictions and walking back one thing and then saying another thing and so on. So this suggests that like the foreign policy agenda is much less, it's more of like this kind of poking into all directions, and it can be still influenced more. But sort of like the damage that can be done here is like concerning to say the least.
Oh,
So
so there is no doubt whatsoever that that is absolutely correct. And I didn't mean to call that into question at all. The only point that that I was making is that the assumption that this rhetoric and these actions reflect the likely end state strikes me as uh, something that Europeans have to consider, but as an unlikely proposition. But
this,
But I,
there's no doubt in my mind that going through that process that we are apparently going through has potentially catastrophic interim uh, interim outcomes.
because that's I mean, for us, like Europeans in general, yeah, we can probably wait this out, but I'm curious like what Nastia thinks about all of this, because you know, Ukraine doesn't have time for the US to spend the
Nasta wants
next
to move
4
to
years.
Bali and like not
No,
not have
Norway,
to think about it.
Norway.
Well, actually, yeah, you know that actually Norway,
She
but
actually
Yes.
wants to
yes,
move to Svalbard, but
or
I mean,
Svalbard.
yeah, and I don't even think you need like a
I'm like
permit or anything.
furious
You can
now.
just move there.
Yeah. I already checked Airbnbs in Oslo and in Svalbard and in several other cities in Norway.
Well, I mean, just let me know. I'll see what I can do, and I'll make sure to help you come here.
Thank you.
But yeah, but I am curious though, like what's the because now I feel like Europe is we're talking the talk, I guess, about Ukraine and like how we need to support Ukraine, but I feel like we're also very much right now looking at ourselves and being like, oh my God, what's happening? And but I'm curious, um, what's the reactions and what do you think is the strategy now from Zelensky and his administration, and like how are I mean, you can't talk for all Ukrainians, but like what's the mood like right now? I've been very curious to ask you that.
Right. So, Zelensky seems to be desperately trying to like find a way to figure it out. Like every time there is some big announcement from the US, he tries to like adjust his demands or his asks to that. Like for example, the most recent thing, he was like, okay, if the safety deterrent contingent thing that's gonna be in Ukraine, like to prevent Russia from invading again, if that's gonna be not foreign, if that's all gonna be Ukrainian, then let's at least work on like sending weapons for this Ukrainian only contingent. So he's like kind of like putting down his demands to sound, I guess, more reasonable in eyes of Trump and the rest of them. But it's just so like I do not envy this job. Like my mother wanted me to be a diplomat. I'm so glad I'm not because like when you read it, like you see someone in Trump's administration saying, uh, you know, America will definitely not guarantee Ukraine anything, and the
Yeah.
responsibility for Ukraine is going to be squarely with Europe. And then, like a few hours later, Zelensky is like, guarantees without America are not real guarantees. And I'm like, how do you square that? Like, this is a complete, 180 kind of thing. So, I mean, the civil
Yeah.
society and just like the mood of like the regular people, um, is very angry, like livid, to be honest. And there's a lot of disappointment, because like, and somebody asked me this yesterday. That someone asked me like, do people feel like this is a 180 turn on like the U.S. approach to Ukraine? And I actually don't
Yeah.
think that that's true. I said no. It's not a 180 turn. It's just that things were really from our point of view, things were really bad under Biden, and under Trump they got so much worse. But it's not like we enjoyed the status quo before. Like we still thought that America's policy towards Ukraine was a failure. And now it's just like now there's just a lot more like there's a lot less of diplomatic talk of like freedom and like standing with Ukraine and all of these things. Now they're like just blatantly saying we don't actually give a crap, and like
Yeah.
we don't actually care if Ukraine is under Russian occupation. We don't care what happens to you. Like we have our own interests. We gotta get critical minerals and lithium out of you, and like that's all that matters. And so it's like the changes that like they're not even like there's no diplomatic talk anymore. It's all just blatantly what they think, and what they
Yeah.
think is really bad stuff. Like
And changing,
yeah, and
apparently.
also changing like five
Yeah.
times a day. And then Europe also like, I mean, we don't trust Europe in any way. Like we've had so many terrible experiences with Europe. People should really go listen to Escalation once it's out on February 24th, the podcast in which
Yeah.
we explain just that, how like we've tried to get guarantees and pledges out of Europe and out of the US before, and like no one could ever guarantee us anything, and it's happening again. Moreover, Germany is still playing a big part. It's like
Yeah.
we seem to have some sort of like bad blood with Germany somehow.
You and
It's
Minna
really
both.
interesting, but right, right. So I
No,
don't
but
know. It's all very very sad, and like it's just kind of crazy because if before at least they were saying the right things, right? Like at least Biden was like putting up like the correct face of it all. So we were like
yeah.
mad at his policies, but at least we could see that okay, they're with us. They support us on some level of their understanding. Whereas now it's like okay, they don't support us. They haven't passed a single aid package, and they also openly say they don't give a crap. And it's like, what do you do with that? Like it's just so shocking.
And you're cozying up with Putin as well,
Oh
which
yeah,
is
yeah,
a
yeah.
double stab in the back.
Yes, yes, yeah.
So to go back to your area of specific expertise, I'm interested in the Russian playbook here. If you have an active shooting war in Ukraine where you're making steady but very slow incremental gains, you have a suddenly complacent and friendly US regime that is not going to, or at least doesn't appear to be, eager to support Ukraine any longer and appears to be interested in forcing an agreement on favorable grounds to you, and you have Europe that is divided and panicking. What is your play?
Oh, yeah. Well,
Really easy questions from you, Ben.
Well,
Thank you.
no. I mean, I think it's like the
So how do
I
we
don't.
solve child poverty in
No,
the
no, no,
world?
no, no. It's not. It's how you think like
yeah.
Putin. You're facing the strategic situation that he is. It's suddenly much rosier than it was 3 months ago. Um, how do you exploit?
Guys, can I
How do you exploit the
can
situation and gain from it?
like right now as we're speaking, sorry I'm interrupting everyone. Vance is giving a speech at Munich, and according to what I'm seeing on like live Twitter, whatever, people are shocked because he like we're about to leave Doctor TV and look at more bombshells. Go on, Karen.
I mean, do you need to do much more than just let Trump and Vance speak? Do the job for you? I
I don't
mean,
know. I'm asking you. I mean, how much of it is like the die is cast and now you just
yeah.
sit back and smile and watch, and how much of it are there additional moves to play?
Oh man, I mean, it's a really good question. I think maybe it's like with Russia, what it does typically is, they try different vantage points. So part of it is playing off on the rhetoric from the US, and that what's coming out right now, especially when it comes to like a domestic audience. Like this is all over all the Russian news media. That's like and all the interviews with Orban, really showcasing how Russia is back, in the company of Trump and the international stage, and how it's like becoming this great power that's been resisting these like stupid Europeans and stupid people with all their values and all of that. I mean, that's one part of it. I'm assuming the troll and bot armies are working at it, day and night, seeking, to I mean, what I would do, I would just play on how Europe and the US are now divided, how Europe is going to be left alone, how there's no point in resisting anymore, that Russia is this mighty power with all this military equipment, and Europe, is failing at every point. That Europe is weak, divided, all of those like rhetorics that we've heard before, and Russia has been really good at like disseminating these narratives, and the same goes for Svalbard, right? So you have these like narratives and frameworks that they have established. It can be Russophobia, it can be like Europe, gay Europa, all of these like various frameworks, and then they just keep building on that and like adding some disinformation here. In this case also, I'm assuming we will see, so what we've already seen, which is part of Russia's scare tactic, is all these like sabotages, right? You had like 44, I think, last year, which are like known, and those are aimed, some are aimed directly at taking out military support for Ukraine, but others are there to scare people and, really showcasing people like this can get uncomfortable for you as well. So you have that dimension as well, the covert like sabotage. You have the disinformation, which is like really spinning on all of these narratives. And then, of course, you have the nuclear rhetoric, like the the deterrence, basically, right? Which is also super efficient when it comes to scaring people. And if I were Russia now, I would just spend all the money I have on like really, really make sure Europe is deterred, and really also making sure that Europe knows that, the US doesn't have your back anymore. We are bolstering up our military, spending all this money on the military, and you guys will basically be at war with us as well if you don't concede and give us Ukraine.
I would like to add one caveat to all this, because we constantly keep saying that Europe is divided, but I actually don't see any evidence for that.
That's the Russian narrative.
That is the Russian narrative. So we need to remember that that is the Russian narrative. And
I
because,
agree.
like, for example, right now in this situation, so that was obviously the fear, and like many thought that there's no chance that that Europe will keep it together if the US sort of starts acting crazy like this, and then like Europe will just like be completely disintegrate, and some will like try to suck up to Trump, and others like maybe not, like I don't know. But so far, for example, since Trump took office, I see no evidence for Europe being divided. Also, since these suggestions for the negotiations were published, or like they became public, there's been no European country or leader or whatsoever. I don't think even Orban has sort of like expressed support for this.
For what? Sorry.
For the US negotiating with Russia over Ukraine, like without involving either Ukrainians nor other Europeans. So I haven't seen so far, like maybe I missed something, but I haven't seen I've seen like just a pretty uniformly very concerned and unfavorable response to this, and no division actually in Europe. So we need to also remember like not to sort of like buy into this narrative, because it's just not true so far. So no.
Yeah. I do think, I'm fairly certain, but this was in Russian news, so I'll take it with a big grain of salt, but Orban was saying like, yeah, they should meet and just get this over with. And,
maybe Orban like that would be completely
Orban
in
says
his...
whatever they tell him to say, like that.
Yes.
Whatever.
All right.
But
We've got 6 minutes, and there's a very important issue we have not yet discussed, which is it has 2 dimensions. So I hear that you guys are all going to a conference in Kirkenes in May
yes.
that I have not been invited to.
Come true.
And my feelings are hurt, and I'm feeling left out.
I can get you an invitation, probably.
Well, so first of all, that's the first agenda item, and I figured I'd mention it on live television to make it as awkward as possible. But the second agenda item is that there is a distinctive feature of Kirkenes for my purposes and unique interests in life, which is, as you may know, Karen-Anna, I spend an unusual amount of time for a middle-aged desk worker projecting Ukrainian flags on Russian diplomatic facilities worldwide, including in Oslo, by the way.
Really?
Yes, where I had a dark night by myself. It was the creepiest, standing on a street corner, projecting on the
Didn't
Russian.
Fabian join you?
Fabian joined me for dinner beforehand, but abandoned me when it actually came time to.
We need to
Not
discuss
very
this on
nice.
Monday with
Better.
Fabian.
Yes.
We'll take that out. We'll make fun of Fabian about that. But I did have
In a few days, he's coming
a
on, right?
gorgeous
Yeah.
projection, which you can find on my Instagram page. But here's the thing: I have never actually projected into Russian territory itself. I tried to do it in Narva, but the Estonian police, and I want to give a hats off to the Estonian police, they did not order me not to. They asked me very politely not to. And the reason was interesting. They were concerned about domestic violence in Narva by the Russian community. They weren't worried about the Russian response. They were worried about the Narva Russian response and the possibility of violence. And so I respected that and didn't do it in Narva. But there's this Kirkenes place where you could project into Russian territory a giant Ukrainian flag. It would look beautiful. And so I have two
And you would also give a very amazing speech or participate in a panel because you're a very valuable speaker.
And so
you should
my question is twofold. One is, how would the Norwegian police respond to this? And secondly, is there enough darkness in May in Kirkenes to actually have the conditions? Because the one thing, my lasers are extremely powerful. They do not compete with the sun. And so this whole land of the midnight sun thing, great for tourism, not so great for laser tourism. And is there an hour in May when there's no daylight up there?
No, because that's
really?
when
I
we're
didn't realize.
approaching. Because we have so you'll have basically the sun will be up for the entire 24
oh my God,
hours. So the
this
entire
is so cool.
Day and night. Yeah, the midnight sun.
So
that's what we call it. And
in
it's
May,
cool.
it's like it's gonna be like there's gonna be a little bit of dusk maybe, but I don't think that it gets properly dark anymore at that point because it's so close to midsummer already. Like midsummer is like
June
the 19th of June.
Yeah. So, okay, this is the answer.
But we can arrange something in, November, something like that.
Look, I mean, you gotta arrange this at a time that it's dark all day. And then we can just set up the projector and, plug it in and just project into Russian territory. And but May it makes it hard.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We're bursting, or I mean,
it's not really your fault. It's the sun.
No, it's the sun's fault. Yeah, but I think May that wouldn't be the best or most efficient time of the year.
I still ask them to if it would be possible to get him on just as a speaker, as a Trump U.S. politics kind of person.
Okay, so I can't make
or
any
is that
promises.
too much? Because you're already putting 50 people on their list.
We're not going to negotiate this on the show.
I do not mind asking. I will ask them.
Yeah.
I will.
Ben, at the risk of going 1 minute over, I just have to channel some Marjorie Taylor Greene energy here and say, Karen-Anna, I think you should just manipulate the weather so that it's dark.
Yes, I'll do my best.
As the resident Jew here, I think I'm the one who gets to direct the space lasers to change the weather in Norway. I don't think we let non-Jews do that. And Minna,
Ben, this is up to you to arrange then, right?
I mean,
I have Jewish heritage,
I'm just saying.
There you go.
The control of the weather really is our department. And we jealously guard it. Look, It is now 9 o'clock, which means we have to wrap up because Dog Shirt TV begins and ends on time. Karen-Anna, welcome to the show. There's a great rule on Dog Shirt TV, which is once you've been a guest, you have that link and you're just allowed to show up anytime. So anytime you want to pop in, just if you click that link, you will show up on screen. And you know,
I'll do some hybrid activity when Fabian is
exactly.
on.
You can show up
Yes,
for Fabian, who we're going to
Yes.
make fun of about ducking the projection. Yo, folks, we're going to be back on Monday. And
with Fabian Hoffman.
with Fabian Hoffman, who is a great expert on missiles, and he's a kind of fake Norwegian, right? He's really German, but he lives in Oslo. You know, we're gonna do it. We're gonna be back, and remember, between now and then, all kinds of crazy shit is gonna happen, and your job is to breathe through it. You know, your job is to not panic, and your job is to support the people directly affected by the craziness, whether that's folks in Ukraine who need weapons. You should run guns no, that's illegal. You shouldn't run guns illegally, but you should find ways to support Ukraine. You should find ways to support people in the United States who are losing their jobs by the hour over crazy shit. You should find ways to support USAID contractors all over the world and grantees all over the world who are laying off people in Uganda and Malawi and Cambodia. I just made that up, but I'm sure it's true. And you should find ways through all of that to breathe and take care of yourself. Because remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And we're only 3 weeks in, and we gotta come out the other side. So, Slava Ukraini, glory to Norway. I don't know what the Norwegian version. Glory to Finland and Sweden, and God bless the United States of America, notwithstanding its deplorable democratic choices. We'll see you soon.